Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, how do you feel these days? Is good and so progress in pleasure about your last half of this term, this May, and we during many days National Memorial, with the Parents' Day, and also Day of Buddhism. We see the class plan about topics expected to be dealt with through 12 class: a conceptual framework, common core, a socialist law, the historical foundations, and also socialist theory of law. And as usual, we will take a brief chart over a distribution of socialist law. So for the couple of weeks forward, we expect to devote our work to the socialist legal system. And you'll note some distinct area of laws which flavors a kind of fundamental dualism between politics and economics, and also legal institutions. So, and we consider kind of a quasi-religious character about the political beliefs and ideology. So it is interesting, and I today noticed that there's a great opportunity for undergraduate students. You know, Dalai Lama, who is a great figure to be minded with an evangelical mission through global nations. So he expected to hold some great talks for the students, undergraduate or graduate, and you can have an internet access. The site, the University of Wisconsin-Madison hosts his lecture, and actually he's a prodigious speaker about religion and humanity as a modern science. He's a unique person to combine the religion with a modern science, a dyad kind of context of dyad to allow us some a bright lines rule of understanding about religion and the modern science. So actually, I said the socialist law has a tradition rooted in Western elements, scope of Western components about the religious thought and a modern science, economic history, kind of a Marx-Engelian concept about a society composed of foundation, and what was realized in real context of politics in 1917's Russia. So you can flavor some late coming nature of this legal tradition, but as we discussed earlier in this class about the family of laws, a family of Western laws, how to consider the socialist legal system in terms of Western legal history. Can we define them in the aspect of a Western legal tradition? There are some opposing views, but the majority of scholars agree on that classification as we have been introduced early in class. And I also make an illustration around the 4 figures which I consider impressive in understanding our lecture. First, you can see a Thomas Hobbes, who is a theorist of a social contract, as you know, and he's actually great proponent about a lateral tenet. And his viewpoint about lateral is very distinctive. That it connotes some kind of subjective rights, not just the reason or the nature of humanity. 2 words typically define the exact and a foundation of a natural law, but he advanced to invest some a practical force of a natural law in the context of earlier Ireland in England. So he is considered as one of 3 prime figures in his workable proposition of social contract theory, along with John Locke and Thomas Hobbes. And you know his treatise, titled Leviathan, in which he argued very powerfully to support the monarch as a foundation of a new society. So, in common, you can see 4 strongest men in theory or practice in understanding the socialist law. And his idea influences the concept of a socialist law, since his social contract theory is specifically addressed revolving around the exact nature of state power. So socialist theorists may prefer his theory. As you see later, the social contract concept was incorporated into the Russian constitution. So they accepted the tenet and proposition and a basic arrangement of our understanding of to the modern society, democratic in nature. So in principle and as a matter of framework, the socialist country has gone in the same manner about the liberalist arrangement of democratic nations. And technically and methodologically, the civil law traditions actually a progenitor of a Soviet legal culture and its institutions, and actually the state laws. Of course, you can see 2 preserves distinct each other, and I have said you need to have an awareness about dualism practiced in socialist nations. So normatism, the area of normatism and prerogativism, which cannot be conceptually standing in the liberalist context, are the dominant understanding about the socialist law, you see. But you can see commonality in the ways of approach in dealing with legal affairs, which can be traced back to a civil law tradition. then you can understand the adoption of a Russian civil code in admiration of a French civil code, and which is product of a Napoleon, and also totally one of a great legal series to support the intellectual foundation, and also actually a practitioner in dominant lead about a codification of Napoleon. So they'll actually a scope of alternatives between German civil code and Swiss civil code and French civil code and others for the revolutionists in Russia, Bolsheviki. Major typology was borrowed from the civil code of France, and they can interplay in greater fashion with a French context. And as you see, there are tendency and also kind of a dominant attitudes. The Russian legal scholars usually differ to civil code, but they argue on originality of a socialist legal theory and differ in a benign neglect about comment of influence from a civil law traditions. So in revolutionary spirit, we can derive three pillars of a modern framework about a civilization of law. So the freedom contract is we elevated in a more strong spirit as sanctity of a contract, and the other is what I call a obligation to repay the damages from torts. So the three basic principles often presented to you in the first class of a civil law in the law department, as you know. And what others? What is absent from the three pillars? Of course, Russia was revolution for communist ideology. So we can hardly see any space for a sanctity of property. So you can see the concept is communist actually, and the working class is equal, and they ideologically directed to the ultimate goal of a monolithic tranquility, you see. And so actually they saw the legal system as a temporary and a transitory, and finally will be dispensed away. So what is that? And also in the context, you need to know the work of Stalin is so splendid to arrange the state in terms of a more enhanced legal system. So we usually ascribe him as the father of a Soviet law, and there is some differences against his against his a senior leader with who is called Lenin. He actually was a lawyer, but has an ambivalent view about the society and law. So he connotes some dualism, actually, which is also foundational to understand the Soviet attitudes. So his period is less powerful in terms of a legal culture. Of course, the British period, beginning in 1917 through 1920, we have many accomplishments and works to produce kind of a legal institutions, but fundamentally Stalin's engagement is more notable in underlying the constitutional culture. So, and there is the story we will further review throughout the class. And the other aspect we need to be cautious about the discourse of a communist legal system. The society is actually dominated by some kind of a strong adherence with a communist ideology. So it is a pseudoscience, which is because the understanding of Marx is a little antidated against the complete form of a contemporary science. So many elements from a various strands of disciplines influence the Marxist work about the historical materialism, or in some kind of dialectic context of societal understanding, or the kind of class consciousness, and also class recognition, and terms set of determinism. Particularly, you can see the Hegelian concept of a state absolutism, and also a 18th, 19th centuries religious proposition from various group of scholars influenced Marxist work. So you can see one figure named Ernst Renan, who is a French philosopher, historian, and scholar of religion, a leader of the school of Oriental philosophy in France. And so you can see in the quasi-religious nature of a communist ideology from the comment of Engels. Engels, who is, one of founders of communism, linked religion and communism, when openly endorsed an earlier statement by a French philosopher, Renan, in the following respect. What? The French Revolution communists, as also in particular Whiting and his supporters, refer to early Christianity long before Renan's words. So, if I wanted to give you an idea of early Christian communities, I'll tell you to look at a local section of the International Working Men's Association. This Frenchman of letters did not know himself how much truth there was in the words just quoted. So, for example, you can see some prototype nature of a communist institution about the criminal matters and also civil jurisdiction. And you can see, as I've said, a separation in practice between the normal area of normatism and prerogativism, and also the law of a communist party usually decides in a strong prerogative against the laws of state. The legislature actually is not powerful in practice, and most of institution should be inculcated by a communist inner circle of a communist parties. So also you can see some confidential interaction. Of course, the kind of a legal concept concerning legality of Soviet law or the constitutional guidelines to base the framework of a society, but you can see also some perception, and which is also theoretical, raised by many of a communist group scholars, the superstructure. You can see the kind of a social institution, a law or other conventions, many institutions not directly touched on by any absolute ideologies, and they lack the competency about authentic understanding of society. They are not a real power, but might come in many ways to mask the actual force to progress over a society, but their understanding is not done about total disregard of a superstructure. So they saw some kind of a economic utilitarianism from the laws or other state acts. So eventually it should be dispensed away. The law should be, but it also can constitute some kind of a effective measure to address the economic needs, which they saw a most prime element to define the community or society. What is economy, working class, and what is export nature of institutions. But also they saw some contribution from legal system or institutions to seek a better justice of economy among the constitutions of society. So how do you agree the conception? Most importantly, the lesson from the comparative law is that the law and legal institution could survive in a progressive stance, even in the context of such a radical revolution, what we call a Bolsheviki. The truth is also vindicated in a French context, and that is also vindicated that the law can evolve and in some cases recur from the past institutions and may moderate into accommodated rearrangement about society, and also the context can be a prototype from the ancient lessons. So it is a going forward and being traced backward to sustain the society in institutions and administration of justice. So it usually discontinue, and we also have some agreements that it is the nature of permanence, but just amenable to kind of a social context of a dominance. But ideologically, for the communists, it is just an institution to support the state communism, which it should be it should be ultimate about its absence, and of course there is no class antagonism. Then the law is unnecessary. Yeah. So the socialist law is an integral part of the Western legal tradition. It is historically linked to civil law system, but at the same time it is qualitatively different from the civil law. It is a product of European civilization, but it has since been received in other parts of non-Western world. In some of the newer members of socialist legal family, the reception of socialist law is not yet total, and as a result of this factor, the westernization of those countries' legal systems is still in progress. And one point of note should be gone with China, for example. So you can see some diversity in the context of progress and incorporation of the communist legal system. The Chinese perception about a state power is more absolute, kind of a concept usually welcomed. For example, attack more, says more. Me is the state. Word given by Louis XIV in France. So the inner circle of Communist Party in the countries which follow the Chinese modality of communism usually consider themselves as kind of a Louis XIV. So they see the state as the communist dominance more powerful rather than the Soviet Russia. So there is a point of distinction, which is not dominant, of course, since they are share a communist ideology, but may have many ramifications in practice about the exact feature of legal arrangement and understanding of communist. Within the socialist legal tradition, there are two major subdivisions: the Soviet and East European group, and the Chinese and Southeast Asian subsystem. The differences between these two subdivisions overall, however, are merely quantitative, not qualitative. Then we turn back to see the fourth topic, or a conceptual form. What makes socialist law a socialist? To set the stage for the analysis we undertake, we pose three basic questions. What makes socialist law socialist? To what extent is socialist law similar to or different from the civil law system in which it is supposedly rooted? Since this inception, has socialist law made any original contribution to the Western concept of law? So you can see some point added by a communist legal system, and also the aspect in fundament influenced by civil law traditions. So they share some portion, but actually exhibit the points of differences in the progress of a socialist legal system. So the first two aspects, the first two deal with the infrastructural and methodological features of the legal system. The third embodies the system's formulas for the reordering of society, and the fourth is primary concern with nature of man. The first two aspects may, for the purpose of this analysis, be referred to as the form of socialist law, the third as the theology of socialist law, the fourth as the theology of socialist law. Together, the latter two aspects make up the substance of socialist law. The analysis which follows will show that there is a dialectical relationship between the form and substance of a socialist law. So, as you see, the communism fundamentally concerned the humanity, and also what? See, I have said a monocyclic tranquility, as you see, and also you may see some words from socialist laws to focus on the function, a talent of each individual. The concept about humanity is in some context, which is usually unexpected about an individual, which is very specific in some cases, and also have some bearings with a classic proposition of a philosopher Plato. You may we may be blessed with the introduction and the metaphysics of a Plato in other classes. You can see also the Plato's attention was drawn upon the function of a citizen, or what they call a polity or polis. So how we could make the kind of society where each individual may have a perfect function about their own nature. So, and also some other strand may be adduced into in the context of a two now standing Western ideology, a liberal, a communist. So Plato considered the class, a governing class, what he termed a guardian, a group of guardians in society. Should not have a private property. So the concept of about understanding about a private property is distinct through the classes they define to address the society of place. So the guardians or the warrior nobility should be properly deprived of a private property, and their remuneration should be dispensed from the resource of a public nature in the context. So actually, you see the spring of a Greek philosophy and also the Christianity in a Western framework to have a major divergence in two streams. In one, we have the westward expansion of the spirit and a concept, which eventually led to the liberal civilization of liberal relations, and you can see some other direction about Eastern Christianity now take their steps through the communist context. So what I like to point out is that Lenin see it pivotal to have a governmental man. So Lenin saw it important that the context of a guardian or the kind of a great person politics, for example, to hold the society in the main of a dominant understanding, what you call a communism. In contrast, you can see some of a moderate figure, what you call who is called Stalin, and accepted kind of a legal institutions which can be responsible and played a part of role to administer the communist state. So he can be said as a father of a Soviet legal system. See, when judged by the character of its infrastructure and methodology of the socialist legal system is deeply rooted in the civil law tradition. But the similarities between the socialist and civil law systems end here. The uniqueness of socialist law as an autonomous system of law derives from its other intrinsic qualities. Socialist law is not only a blueprint for the social, economic, and political transformation of society, but also a form of a secular theology. Socialist jurists are a secularized high priest participating in legal institutions with a sense of the institution's social purpose and historical mission. To anyone anyone viewing it from the outside, the modern socialist law is a significant description of the way in which the socialist society analyzes itself and projects its image to the world. And so, through the classes, you can have a point of note, which is important in the comparative purpose, the legal education and the package of discipline program also matter seriously to shape the legal culture and legal system. As you can see later, there are distinct set of legal education, which is confidentially separated to breed other types of lawyers. In one strand, they expect to foster the kind of a communist technocrats, communist allies to serve the party, the law of a party, communist party, and also there are a group of technocrats competent to address the state laws. So they took the path in a distinct context of a different system of legal education, as you see later. So the point is also involved in a secret theology. So the ideological context of a communist society is critically determinative about many ways in a communist legal institution, actually. Socialist jurists are secularized high priests participating in legal institutions with a sense of the institution's social purpose and historical mission, and they also interplay to address the common goals of a communist party. To anyone, it is a major articulation of socialist culture's self-concept, and the deepest and yet the most generalized philosophical statement that the Marxian socialist society can make about itself. It is the primary ordering principle of socialist society. In primitive societies, religion, law, and morals were indistinguishably mixed. So it is starting point we begin to consider the nature of law, and also you have some extent of awareness about this tenet, which allows us to investigate philosophically the areas of our adherence. The severance of three ideas of law from morality and of religion from law belongs very distinctively to the later stages of mental process. The Western legal tradition is characterized by, among other things, the clear separation of these three ideas. So they share common elements in approach. But although religion, law, and morals are separated in Western law, they are nevertheless still very dependent on each other. So there are common bases about the societal arrangement, you see. And typically, now we need to focus on some points of distinction between two traditions. For example, we see some general convergence between religion and law in Western society. of course, that is true about a socialist legal treatment, but the aspect of religion is stronger, but that is less connected with legal institutions. The what a religion connotes in usual sense, it is kind of absolutism, but the foundation of absolutism in society, communist society, is related with the political ideology about the economic elements. That is not the case, of course, truly in Western society, the Western liberal society. Without religion, there can be no morality, and without morality, there can be no law. Western law is founded on Western morality, which in turn is founded on the three forms of Western religion: Christianity, Judaism, and Marxism. Whereas the civil and common law systems have roots in the Judeo-Christian religion, socialist law is anchored in the tenets of Marxism. In this context, Marxism is perceived as a powerful mixture of social and political theories with a theology. It is in fact a form of a liberation theology. So once we have awakened mind about liberation theology in the context of a defensive state against communism, what is? In many aspects, the socialist legal process is strikingly similar to the musical process. What is musical process? We can identify several actors who are concerted to entertain our daily experiences. For example, composers and singers and performers. So, socialist lawmakers can be likened to composers. Both write the text that others must interpret. Judges and lawyers are the performers of the music of socialist law. They look at texts and endow them with their own interpretations. However, if socialist law is to function as its originators intended, must maintain the rhythm of its conception. In performing their role, socialist judges and lawyers interpret the legal text much as instrumentalists interpret a musical score. In socialist law, as in music, there is a conscious awareness of performer's duty to be faithful to the composer's original intent. So, how to well perform the musical scores also heavily dependent on a performers. Is Hannah Zhang performing the Bach, or is many great names to allow pleasure for later time. It should not be inferred, however, from this analogy that the listeners as lawmakers de jure are the real originators of the socialist law. The true progenitors of socialist law are the members of the inner circles of the ruling Communist Party of the individual socialist country. These include the members of party secretariat, the party Politburo, and the central committee of the party. So, the names of the institution, which is powerful, to handle their state matters. From the perspective of comparative lawyer, the socialist legal system can be seen as a bold experiment in social engineering. Its historical mission is not merely to regulate interpersonal relationships in society, but to change them. It is not a reaction against the failure of the pre-revolutionary legal system of the individual socialist country to secure the human ideal of equality, justice, social harmony, and well-being. The millions of people who today live under socialist law, it is a powerful dream, not a merely a progress from the Ancien regime of a Russian Empire. It is a most radical form of revolution and powerful dream to eventually lead the constitution of society in equal context, and the society to perform the tolerance given by the heaven at the most extent. So it is a powerful dream, and also they have been emancipated from superstructure, which is the nature of concealing the true dynamism in force to progress. As a superstructure, what is super? They can live in the society without any kind of superstructure, which is perfunctory in the materialistic perspective, and but in public way, they have some ideas about their role to serve the economic purpose. So powerful that it attracts even when continually perverted in practice. Either its failure and perversions are ignored, whereas the faith persists that some errors in some newly discovered land of innocence, its feasibility will at least be proven. To its proponents as well as its apologists, the appeal of socialist law is an object of faith and a spiritual idea. All national legal systems within the socialist legal tradition share certain common features. However, no two national laws are exactly alike in every respect. Because law is a normative expression of the tradition of given nation, there are bound to be differences. For example, between the laws of the USSR and Poland, or between the laws of the People's Republic of China and Cuba, even though all of these national legal systems belong to the socialist family of laws. The development of law may be likened to the organic growth of plant. It is slow and derives its strength from the inner powers of spirit of people. As such, the evolution of law is a process of historical growth, which develops silently and unconsciously from one age to another. Because law is not the product of the reason of a particular legislator, its natural progression can neither be accelerated nor completely stopped by the intervention of a legislator. In addition to its theology and ideology, socialist law is unique in two other ways. It has added two refinements to the methodology which it borrowed from the civil law. The original contributions of socialist law to the civil law methodology include the de jure operation of socialist law or procedure at two coexistent levels of normatism and prerogativism, and the depth and breadth of participation of the procurator in all judicial processes. The procuracy is a term we usually encounter through discourses, the institution's name, and also some of elements involved in criminal procedure. Taken in their totality, these four features give the socialist law is a socialist flavor. Socialist law is socialist essentially because of these these four features. For this reason, these four elements will constitute the theme for the rest of this introductory discussion. First, let us provide a few more details about what we have referred to as the theology of socialist law. Socialist law is perhaps the first scientific pseudo-religion that the world has ever known. Officially, the socialist lawmaker likes to think of a socialist law as a scientific formula for the eventual transformation of the present imperfect a socialist man into an ideal communist man. So you can see some points of note between two concepts. So they see the socialist man as imperfect and also impermanence. So it is should be transitory to the communist man in most idealistic form. So at the same time, the socialist lawmaker denies the religious nature of their law. To an impartial student of the socialist legal system, however, the law is neither truly scientific nor it is truly true religion. To the extent that it is predicated upon the theoretical principles of scientific communism, it may be described as a pseudo-science. The pseudo-religious character of socialist law derives from the fact that as symptom of rules, it is firmly anchored in the philosophical postulates of Marxism, and Marxism in turn may be described as a secular world religion. A careful analysis of the fundamental principle of modern socialist law indicates that some of its intrinsic tenets are neither scientific nor internally logical. The juxtaposition of some of its legislative principles indicates that it is replete with inconsistencies. So, oxymoronium of a understanding may well be expected, but there are also some constancy and what is consistency in the context. Perhaps that is purposefully so. The discipline it most closely parallel is probably theology. As an instrument of social engineering as well as a doctrine of redemption, it operates on the premise that if you can affect the belief of people and make them think a new method has been found, even if your reasoning is all wrong, you can probably change the system. It is intended as self-fulfilling a prophecy. It is dogmatic, yet pragmatic at times. So very unique to see the context. Usually we take discourse about dogma and the kind of a hypothesis, what we present survey or experimental outcome for analysis, and some meaningful conclusion in the purview of science, a specific discipline. But it is a dogmatic, an edifice of an extensive scope of a social science, and actually possesses some self-fulfilling prophecies about the understanding and stage through the history. It is surprising to face a pragmatic, a Bolshevik revolution, or a Chinese the advent of Chinese communism in 1949. At pseudoscience, Marxism seeks at the same time to give intellectuals a cause, a sense of mission, a conviction that their lives are worthwhile because history needs them. Here a system which is both science and ethics, which calls itself historical materialism and demanded idealist commitment. Marxism as a world religion is a conjunction of incompatibles. It calls upon human beings for a supreme act of free will, that of intervening in the history with a revolutionary act and creating their own society. But it does so with a necessitarian vocabulary, so that the working class in its highest moment of freedom is fulfilling historical necessity. Freedom and determinism are joined in a dialectical unity. So we can find some strand of a Calvinism, which foresighted is kind of a determinism about the humanity or society. What applied it to the context of society, and also the artifice of Marx, who is actually a communist theorist, turned to be translated in kind of a edifice, a monumental and practical vision about global enterprise. As a world secular religion, Marxism has this direct, which is akin to Calvinist, so we have the word, a Calvinist predestination. Like other creeds, Marxism has a sacred text, its saint, as well as its holy city. So, Calvin, who should be a faithful Christian, you can see, so also other name for Protestant movements in 17th century, so Martin Luther and also Calvin, they protest against the ancient regime of Catholic. For the religious group at the times, Catholic is just an ancient regime to improve, and the proposition is very strong to reform the society, even in a political context. So the demise of Catholic means the advent of nation state, as you see, Henry VIII in England also declared national church. The religious arrangement focuses on a national context, with the name Anne Boleyn, which is second wife for King Henry VIII, and actually he should obtain the permission from a Roman Pope, but he was denied the permission. Then he got angry to declare independence of national church. So secular power now rose to protest. Also, some when inculcated a group of a new religious attitudes, and also in the group of predicament against the prevailing power of Catholic, argues to secure the basic interest, which is injustice in the perception. So Calvin is one of figure. And how do you perceive the Protestantism in relation with communism? Like other creeds, Marxism has its sacred text, its saints, as well as its holy city, as I said. If Marx is Messiah, Lenin is Saint Paul. As true of many other world religions, Marxism has witnessed a luxuriant a proliferation of sects and a sub-sects. The deviationists, the revisionists, the fundamentalists, the modernizers, and so on. But after all these analogies have been made, what remains to be emphasized is how different Marxism is from other religions. Unlike Christianity, for instance, its appeal has always been forced to the intellectuals. Christianity was resisted by the ancient philosophers who regarded it as an aberration of the lower classes. It spread from below upwards. So Marxism, on the contrary, has been carried by the intellectual to the proletarian and peasant. So you see the real element of Christianity may be found in a spirit of Martin Luther. It is protesting against the prevailing power. And also what is any similarity with a communist ideology. To intellectuals, it has appealed as no other doctrine has, because it integrates for them most powerfully discordant psychological motives. In Marxism, one finds for the first time a combination of the language of science and the language of myth, a union of logic and mysticism. So it bears a coattail as science, but possesses instead of a religious quality, a dominant in influence, and actually about the attitudes of each individual. Scientific criticism in the 19th century has deprived intellectuals of the gun and left them uncertain as to the foundation of the ethics. Scientific agnosticism was an austere self-denial in a world inherently lifeless and undramatic, a world with neither purpose nor climax. Social movement had assumed the character of a superficial, altruistic, anodyne, and grounded in the nature of the universe. In Marxism, however, one's ideas could be taken as expressions of an underlying historical necessity in things. So, time is up for the first session. So, we have some more understanding about the basics of introduction concerning the socialist law. I'll be back soon. Thank you.